Her name once glittered across the front pages, wrapped in promise and desire, Imogen Hassall, the woman the press could not resist. They built her up with praise and glamour, then tore her down with rumors and ridicule. Each headline chipped away at her until the world forgot the difference between the actress they invented and the woman she truly was. They called her the Countess of Cleavage, as if beauty alone were her crime. Every photograph, every rumor, every whispered story became another thread in a tapestry she never asked to be woven into. And when the applause finally faded, what remained was silence, heavy, unrelenting silence. Behind every printed word lay a truth no one cared to tell. The story of a woman who only wanted to act, but instead became a headline. And in the end, those headlines were all that remained of her. Imogen Hassall was born in 1942, into a family already breathing the language of cinema and theater. Her father, a director. Her mother, an actress. Art ran through her veins before she could even name it. From childhood, she knew how lights could both reveal and destroy, how applause could feel like love, but fade like smoke. When she entered the world of film in the late 1960 seconds, British cinema was changing, daring, sensual, defiant. Imogen embodied all of it. Magnetic eyes, a laugh that lit up rooms, a presence both delicate and dangerous. Audiences adored her. Producers saw opportunity. The press saw a story. She became the face of Carry On Loving, When Dinosaurs Ruled the Earth, and dozens of glossy spreads that blurred the line between art and spectacle. Then came the title that would follow her forever, the Countess of Cleavage. A joke, a label, a curse. Imogen wanted to be seen as an actress. The world wanted her to stay a fantasy. Before she was a name whispered by millions, Imogen Hassall was just a young woman chasing purpose through performance. She trained in dance and drama, her movements graceful, her voice filled with conviction. Acting wasn't a dream, it was the only language she knew to express herself. Her early work came quietly. A role here, a line there, until the late 1960 seconds arrived with a wave of new cinema that craved rebellion and sensuality. Imogen stepped into that current with a natural ease that felt almost fated. Her beauty was undeniable, but what truly drew people in was something subtler, a kind of emotional honesty that lingered long after the scene ended. Audiences fell in love with her. Critics noticed her charm, though they spoke more of her appearance than her artistry. It was the paradox that would define her career. The more she was desired, the less she was understood. Every smile she gave to the camera was real, but behind it lived a quiet longing for something the world would never give her, to be seen not as an image, but as an artist. Fame, at first, felt intoxicating, the lights, the attention, the feeling of being wanted by the entire world. But soon, the applause became a cage. The cameras that once celebrated Imogen Hassall began to hunt her. Every dinner, every glance, every private heartbreak was captured and sold as entertainment. The tabloids followed her like shadows, spinning stories from moments that barely existed. When she smiled, they called her wild. When she looked tired, they said she was broken. Her image had escaped her control, and no matter how she tried, she could not catch it again. The nickname, the Countess of Cleavage, became a curse that stripped her of her depth. Casting directors stopped seeing an actress, they saw a commodity. Behind closed doors, Imogen pleaded for roles that mattered, the kind that could remind the world she was more than a photograph. But no one was listening. Her marriage to actor Kenneth Ives unraveled, and with it came a loss far greater than love, a personal heartbreak that left her hollow. Yet even that grief became copy for the papers. Her pain was no longer private, it was public property. The more she was watched, the more invisible she became. By the mid-1970 seconds, the glitter had turned to dust. The film offers stopped arriving. The same producers who once praised her beauty now called her difficult, unstable, yesterday's news. The press, unsatisfied with her silence, began inventing noise. Imogen Hassall tried to rebuild, to find something real beyond the headlines. She reached out for serious roles, wrote letters to directors, but the industry had already moved on. To them, she was a remnant of a decade they'd outgrown. The loneliness crept in slowly, not as drama, but as the absence of it. She stayed home more. The phone rang less. Even friends stopped calling, unsure of what to say. To the world outside, she had simply faded. But to those who knew her, the fading was heartbreakingly deliberate, a woman withdrawing from a world that refused to see her clearly. In her journal, she wrote about exhaustion, about the endless noise of being misunderstood. "I used to think fame was a kind of love," she wrote once. "Now I know it's just attention." And with every passing day, that attention grew quieter until even the tabloids turned away. In November 1980, Imogen Hassall checked into a modest hotel on the outskirts of London. To those around her, it seemed like another brief escape from the noise. But behind that quiet retreat was a woman who had given everything: her talent, her youth, her peace, to a world that no longer cared to remember her. When the news broke of her passing, the tabloids swarmed once again. They framed her final moments with the same cruelty they had shown her in life, reducing her story to a few sensational lines. There was no respect, no dignity, only profit. She was 38 years old. Among her belongings, investigators found letters, simple, tender words that spoke not of scandal, but of weariness. "I don't want to be a burden anymore," one read. It wasn't despair, it was surrender, quiet and complete. The industry moved on, as it always does. But within the small circle of people who had truly known her, grief mixed with fury. They knew what the public never did, that the headlines hadn't just written about her. They had written her out of her own life. And that is how the light went out, not in chaos, but in silence. Time has softened the cruelty once printed in ink. And what remains of Imogen Hassall today is something far gentler, a quiet ache, a face frozen in celluloid, a question that still lingers: how could someone so full of life be so easily erased? Her films now resurface as echoes from another age. In When Dinosaurs Ruled the Earth, she was radiant and raw, her eyes telling a story the dialogue never could. In Carry On Loving, her laughter carried an undertone of longing, a woman trapped in a world that loved her beauty more than her truth. Even in the smallest roles, there was a spark that hinted at what she might have become if only the world had let her. Modern critics have begun to re-examine her work with the empathy time allows. They see the talent buried beneath the gossip, the depth behind the glamour. For younger actresses, her name has become a quiet warning, a reminder that fame without respect is only another kind of prison. Imogen Hassall's legacy isn't written in tragedy, but in truth. She was more than what they said she was. And now, at last, the story is hers again. Imogen Hassall's life reads like a script that the world refused to let her finish. She lived under lights that burned too brightly, in a spotlight that saw everything except her soul. What began as a dream of expression became a battle for ownership, not of fame, but of identity. She wasn't destroyed by failure. She was undone by visibility, the kind that takes and never gives back. The tabloids didn't simply tell her story, they consumed it, piece by piece, until she disappeared inside their words. And when there was nothing left to take, they moved on, leaving silence where a woman once stood. Yet even in that silence, her presence endures. Her eyes, captured in film stills and faded posters, look straight through time, asking us to remember that behind every name in print, there is a heartbeat, a history, a human being. Imogen Hassall's tragedy is not only hers, it belongs to every artist who has been seen too much and understood too little. And through her, Fame and Shadows reminds us: the brighter the light, the darker the cost. When you think of Imogen Hassall, do you remember the actress or the story they wrote for her? If she could stand before the world now, would she ask to be loved again, or simply to be seen for the first time? Her life is a mirror, reflecting the danger of a fame that feeds on silence. And yet, through every headline, every photograph, and every whispered rumor, one truth remains: she was real. She felt, she dreamed, and she paid the price for being unforgettable. What part of her story stays with you the most, the light or the shadow it cast? Share your thoughts below, and let her name be spoken with the tenderness she was denied. Fame and Shadows, every star has its story.